Yesterday I got a critique that I didn't introduce myself well enough. So my name is Joe Diaz, or Diaz, everywhere else but Pontiac. I am a young sign maker. I started in the business, I don't even know. I mean, I grew up in the business, I should say. And I work for a family-owned and run sign shop in a small town called Pontiac, Illinois. And it's located in central Illinois, probably an hour, what would you say, 2 hours from Chicago. And my brother is right here in the front row. He's filming, and so this whole thing is going to be filmed. I'm also recording it my screen right now as we go. And the whole idea behind that is you can take notes if you want to. That's fine. But if you want to see me after this is over and give me your business card or your contact information, I can send you an email to the link that will have these videos. And if you have, if you want to go back and rewind and pause things, you'll be able to do that. So I feel like that's a good way to, step away from the note taking and kind of just have fun and listen. So that is, like I said, this whole thing is going to be recorded, and just get a hold of me afterwards, and we can kind of get that figured out. How many were at my seminar yesterday? Okay, so a lot of you were. In my seminar yesterday, what I did is we talked a little bit about creating a logo, and we essentially built this logo right here. Today what I want to talk about is how to turn this logo into a brand. And essentially what we're doing is we are taking this logo, which is just a simple one-color design, and then we are doing all of this with it. And what this means is more jobs for you, more money for you. It means a good relationship with your customer. It means a lot of repeat business. If you're like me, I like to start all my designs, I shouldn't say all, but a good majority of my designs as a one-color design. A good, solid one-color design will work well once you start adding color. If you start that way, you won't go wrong. Well, you could go wrong, but it's a little easier to not go wrong when you start with a solid one-color logo. So that would be one tip that I would give you is, maybe start that way. As time goes on, you may not have to do that, but the whole point is contrast. You don't get any higher contrast in black on white or white on black. So if you can do a design that works well this way, you're working with the contrast. So what you'll see is we've basically created what I like to call an icon logo, which would have an icon or some sort of imagery, and then the name of the business and maybe some supporting text to go with it. And the benefits of doing a logo like this is it's a very flexible logo. You can arrange it in a taller, more narrow aspect, or you can do a wider, shorter aspect. And as you can see, we've got a white and black version, we've got a white on black version, and then we can start adding color. With the high contrast, what you want to do is take something important like the name of the business and have that be the highest contrast. And so that's what we did with this Arcadia once we started adding logo. Now this business is, would be if you're familiar with Dave & Buster's, it's a restaurant and video game place where you can take your friends or you can take your family and you get a meal. They've got a bar in there and you can go around and play video games. Well, this is essentially the same type of business, but what they're going with is more of a Greek, Mediterranean cuisine and a Greek theme. So what we've done is we've taken a lettering style, the classic chiseled lettering style that you would see in old ancient Greek architecture, and we're using that. So right away, the viewer recognizes that type of lettering style, and it resonates. It says something inside their head that, hey, well, that seems familiar. What is that? And then they start thinking about, being in high school and learning about Greek mythology and seeing those elements. Or maybe they might remember a Euro restaurant that they went to that had a similar layout. So when we do a logo like this, that's one thing that we're trying to do. Now the imagery also supports the theme. What we've gone with is a Greek warrior, and he's got a joystick in his hand. So that kind of plays on the Mediterranean theme, and then also the video game part of their business. I'm going to walk over here, and we're going to start on the CorelDRAW part of this. Okay, so let me open up a file here. Actually, let me open up another one. Okay, as we can see, we've started with the logo that we created yesterday, which is this icon-based logo. Now, for the important part of showing the client the versatile nature of an icon logo is so that they can visualize how they'll be able to use it on different applications. So we have the different versions of these logos on different colors. Now, this is what I would like to call a panel design, and the reason why I call that panel design is because it makes for a good panel sign. If there's any downside to these types of logos, it's the fact that they're not very versatile. You can't, like with an icon, you can't rearrange the elements as well to make it fit a certain space. However, you can do a logo that can be a little bit of everything like this one. This one can be a panel design, or it can be an icon design. And essentially what we've done to do that is we've used some other design elements throughout the business, or throughout the business's theme. And one would be this element here, which is common on that type of Greek theme. It's a simple element, and we can reuse it on a lot of different things. The other thing I want to point out is this logo has no crazy textures on it. It's got no gradients, no fades. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done logos using textures and fades and gradients. But if you're working on a brand for a larger business, the whole point is to have a flexible design. Now, there's nothing to say we couldn't take the same design and maybe add those effects to it as long as that design still reads well. But at some point, we also want to have this simplified version too, just in case they want to make T-shirts or screen print, something like this. So what I'm going to show you right now is how to create these designs. And this is a very simple thing. Basically, I'm sure all of you in math class had the grid paper and got bored and started doodling on it. At least I did. But all you got to do is just take a bunch of boxes, now, as you notice, yesterday I talked a little bit about the snap feature. For those of you that weren't here, you can kind of see how that's working. Essentially, by using Alt-Z, we can turn it on and off, or you can go up to View and then Snap to Objects. And what that does is I can grab the corner of this block here, and I can snap it to that node. Another thing we talked about yesterday is when you use the duplicate function, which all I'm essentially doing is holding down the control key and pressing D, it's following my last duplicate command. So if I go up now, if I were to hit duplicate again, it would now go up instead of over. So we've created that design right there. Now what we can do is simply select all of it. And when you select multiple shapes, you'll get these tools up here. And you have combine, you have weld, you have trim, all very powerful tools for creating
your own custom shapes. So what I'm going to do is simply select weld. It's going to put them all together. Now I've got a lot of excess nodes in here. You know, for printing, that's not a huge deal. In most cases for plotting, that's not a huge deal. But to get rid of that's very simple. You simply use your shape tool here. You select all these nodes, and you can go up to here where it says reduce nodes, select that, and it's going to get rid of all those excess nodes. Now all we do is we duplicate that shape over and over and over again, and we've created a nice little design that we can use throughout this theme. The same principle for this texture here. Now, whereas right here we're creating a straight line that we can use on certain elements of the design, this might make for a nice, very subtle textured background. And when I say texture, I'm not saying, you know, wood grain or anything like that that's a photographic texture, but this would be a vector texture, meaning we can make this as large as we want without losing the quality of an image like you would with a bitmap. Now the important part about using textures in your design is the texture cannot overpower the actual content. So it can't overpower your logo. It can't overpower the primary imagery. It needs to support it. It needs to sit back in the background and just add that extra flair without taking over the design. Now this is kind of fun. To do this, there's a couple different ways you could do it. I'm going to show you the easiest way. Since we've already created this design, we'll hit duplicate. Then what I like to use is the polygon tool, which usually sets right about here, and it's in with the star tool, the complex star, the spiral. Now any of these tools, if you want to, you can actually pull them off and have them be you know, sit on their own down here if it's a tool that you use often. But I just keep it by default in here. Now when I first pull it out, it's gonna, you know, just be a regular pentagon here, but we can start adding more sides by going up here and typing in the side that we want. Now 60 might be too much, so let's go 20. There we go. Now the cool thing about the polygon tool, which is right here, is whatever you do to one side, it will repeat that same action on the other side. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but what I'm doing with that is creating, actually, you know what, I'm going to go from 20 to 22, and the reason why is by doing that, I've got a flat side to work with here. Now by using the shape tool, we can create a custom shape. We can pull this up here, pull that there, we'll move this to here. And all I'm doing to add a node is I'm double clicking on the line, and then I'm pulling it over. I'm clicking and I'm holding and I'm pulling it over to the point, and it's just snapping to that point of that shape that I just created. And you just kind of walk it around this shape. And then in this case, you might want to bring this over here like that. And so what we've done is we've created that shape here. Now what you may want to then do is create a circle. The circle will automatically, if you grab the center of the circle, you can snap it to the center of this shape. We can pull it out. And you know, we've created this custom shape that we can use on our design. Now for the panel logo, I used it right here. And then using those same trim and weld techniques, You can trim it out down here because we don't need it to go into the lettering. I created these wedges here to kind of accent the top part of the lettering and also create a nice spot where so that this doesn't just end. It then becomes an extension of that shape. Now, when I create a custom border like this, a lot of times what I like to do is select my elements. So let's pretend that we just have this here. I like to select my elements. We can delete this here. And in a case like the lettering here, what I might want to do is create a block around it. And we could do the same thing with this lettering here. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. Now you can do a couple different things. You can select all these shapes. You can use this create boundary effect, which is essentially going to go around everything that we've created and create a shape that goes around the boundary of that shape. So what we've done is we've created this new shape here from all of these shapes. Or you can select all of this and simply weld them together. Welding takes a little bit longer sometimes because it's got to take all those shapes and combine them together. The other nice thing about using welding over the boundary command is if you have a letter like this A here, actually I'll just pull out the whole lettering here. Now if I were to create a boundary around this, let's ungroup it. It will not create a boundary. It will not get these center parts of these A's or this R or this A or this D. So that's the main difference, and that's if you do a lot of printing and you've got like a cartoon and you want to create a cut contour, this boundary tool is very powerful for that. So we've created this shape here, and I'm going to bring it back up to the logo up here. And right here where we have, I showed some of you yesterday the transparency tools, and we might get into a little bit more of that here today too, but there's also the contour tool. And by selecting that, we can create a contour around that shape we've just created. Then I broke that apart. I delete this inner area. And because this kind of looks odd and not very appealing, what I do is I delete those nodes, I turn this into a line, and I do the same thing here. And then a nice little extra touch that I added was I added a node in the middle of here. So what you can do is if you select this node over here and you add this plus button, it's going to add a new node in the center of that line. If you add the plus button again, it's going to divide it into quarters, and so on and so forth. But we only need one. And then by selecting it and simply selecting the arrow key on my keyboard, I can kind of adjust that the way I want. So I've created a boundary around this, and from there I can add a second contour and then add my additional color. Now this would make for a great sign. This you could do this part could be done in smalts or sandblasted. If you have a nice router, this whole thing could be routed out. These letters could be dimensional. They could be chiseled. You can have a lot of fun with this type of design. So that is how I created that. Now the whole point of this seminar is how do we take a logo and then convert it into a brand. What I want to make sure I do is I want to spend a little bit of time on the sign part of it. So what we've done here is we've taken the building that we want to put the sign on. Now we created a logo and we've got the cartoon or the illustration. But the nice thing about a flexible brand is you don't necessarily always have to use every single element that you've created. In time, this company might be recognized by their icon or the illustration. In time, they might be known for just their name. So what you want to do is you want to create a logo, and they need to effectively brand that logo. They need to use it, and then those elements will become recognizable even on their own. So what we've done here is we've taken the Arcadia text and the Games and Grill, and we've added it to this building here. Now, this right here is mainly just to show the customer how the sign will look. Obviously, when you're doing the job, you want to get very nice measurements. You want to maybe do some other additional work. You might not want to do it at an angle like this. You might want to get some straight-on shots. But the reason why I chose this photo is because sometimes you can't get a straight-on shot. So how do we approach that? How do we deal with that? So we've taken a photo, and using the measurements that you took, let's say you got a width here and then your height here, you can create a box to that measurement, and you can plan out how large you want your lettering to be. So we're going to take the Arcadia from the lettering. Now, using that Alt-Z command, I'm not holding it down, it's just I have it toggled by using Alt-Z. I select it to this, I snap it to the center, and I hold the Shift key down to make it a little bit larger. So I'm going to duplicate this photo and show you how we did this. You might want to make that a little bit larger. And we're going to move it up a little bit. So now we're going to group this. It's important that you group it for this. The next thing I'm going to show you won't work unless you group it. So you want to select everything, and you want to go up here where it says group, or what I like to do is simply select Control-G. Bring this shape over here. Now, last year I did something similar to this in a seminar I did. One person asked me, well, how come you didn't use distort? And I'll show you right now. What you actually want to use instead of the distort command is you want to go up to effects, and you want to go to perspective, because distort is distorting the image. Perspective is a true perspective. So if we want to make this image look like it's truly in perspective, this would be the way to go. So you hit add perspective, and it gives you kind of this grid here. And the grid's helpful for if there's other shapes on here. It kind of helps you line things up. Or if the shape isn't a simple rectangle, the grid is helpful too. So we grab the nodes using our shape tool, and we pull it up into the corners of the design. And now we've got that where we want it. And so now we'll hit ungroup. We can delete that square. We don't need that anymore. And even now, when we select this shape and we go back into the shape tool, that grid's still going to be there even though we got rid of the rectangle that we originally used. Now, if you want to get rid of the grid and you actually want to go in and edit these nodes, you have to select it and do control or convert to curves or Control Q. And then when we do that, now when I select it with the shape tool, it's not giving me that perspective grid. And we can actually go in here and edit the nodes like we were able to earlier. So what we've done is, we've created that. Now, if this were truly in perspective, and if we had the chisel is actually dimensional, your lines would be kind of moved over a little bit. But for the sake of this sketch, that may not be necessary, and it really depends on how deep that bevel was, on whether or not that's important. So now from here, what I'm going to do is select that shape, and I'm going to go to the extrude command, and I'm going to select the dark gold and create a shape here. Now, if I add an outline to that, that doesn't seem right, obviously. So what we want to do is go up to this this box right here, and we can select a few different options. Oh, for whatever reason, I don't have my seat welded. Hold on one second. There we go. Let's try that again. I only add the outline just so I can see what's going on with that 3D shape. Otherwise, it just looks kind of like a weird random shape. Now here again, true perspective. This would be a lot smaller over here than it is here. So, you know, this isn't 100% accurate. One way to get around that would be, instead of using the extrude command, we could duplicate this shape, and I'll show you that here next. But you know, if that wasn't an issue and we just want to get this out the door a little bit quicker for sketch purposes, we could simply do it this way. And then what we could do is break the extrude apart and maybe give it a, select just the extrude and maybe give it a darker color. Now let me show you the other way we can do this. This actually kind of, you know, you have to sort of use your eye to figure this part out. You can't rely on, you could actually do the math, but it would be some difficult math to do. What I'm doing is I duplicated this shape here. I simply moved it down into the left just a little bit. I'm trying to kind of do what I think would look right if this were dimensional. And then I'm going to distort it. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit here like that. And then I'm going to select this, and I'm going to distort it a little bit like this. And see, now that looks a little bit more, you know, this space here is smaller than this space here, which if you were actually looking at this in 3 dimensions, that would be the way it would work. Now the problem is it looks like it's a shadow, and to fix that, you simply select this shape, and we add a node here. Actually, we want to select everything first and convert it to a line, because right now they're all in curves. That's one of the side effects of using the perspective tool, is it takes all your straight lines and it converts them to curves. So if you have those straight lines and you need them to be straight again, you can use your shape tool to do that. But I'm just going to add a new node here. Simply grab those out and work my way all the way down. And I'll just do a few of these just to kind of, I won't do the whole thing. So now that makes a little bit more sense. It looks like it's a little bit more dimensional. It's not perfect. You know, this would actually be over a little bit more, but just to kind of give you an idea, that's how I've done that. Now the next thing we would do is, you know, obviously this wouldn't just be a dimensional shape. There's some shadows going on here on the building. So how can we duplicate that? So what you would do is you would duplicate this shape here or this shape here. We pull it down. Then right where we use the extrude tool, if you select the little arrow here, we get more tools available to us. We go to transparency. Then we want to use a universal transparency, and then we can kind of adjust the opacity or the transparency of the shape that we've created. And then we simply move it to best match the shading on the rest of the photo. And so what we've done is we've kind of given it the illusion that it's also casting a shadow. You know, a lot of this stuff isn't necessary for a sketch, but I find that the extra effort you put into the sketch is just one step closer to get in your way on a design when you're pitching it to a client. If you can kind of show them how it's going to look, usually they'll go with that design over another. And so in this case, we're kind of crowding that bar below it, and we can move it up a little bit and use the distort and kind of distort it a little. So, we've created. We're getting there. We got a little ways to go. What we can then do is take this light gold, use our interactive fill tool, which is how we can add gradients to all of our colors, and we can kind of pull this up and add some white. And when you look at shapes, in the real world, they're not a flat color. As they go off in the distance, they lose a little bit of their color. There's a little, light hits things in different ways. There's different sheens. So even if you do that just a little bit on your vector illustrations, it just adds a nice little touch. It makes it look a little bit more realistic. So that's what we've done there. Now the same thing applies to the secondary lettering, except for in this case, I simply duplicated that lettering and just added a black. From a distance in a sketch, it's still giving the same effect without us putting as much effort into it. Now you can also see in this one, what I've done is I've taken a lighter color on the parts where the sun is really hitting the shape, and it just kind of, again, adds to the realism of the artwork that we're creating. And this is done with that same, not distort tool, but the same perspective tool. Now, using that same perspective tool, we can take that design element that we've created and maybe add that as vinyl lettering as a nice effect for the bottom part of the window. The other thing you could maybe do is do a logo on the door with the hours. You could do the same thing using that perspective tool. You just measure the area that you want to do this with. You design it just like you would in that area. Then you group it all together and you use your perspective tool to snap it into the area of the photo, and it will do that effect pretty nicely. So we've kind of done that all along the edge, just something kind of nice and simple. It doesn't take away from what's going on up here. It just kind of ties that whole theme in together. Any questions on how I did that? Nope. Okay, good. Now we're going to move on to the vehicle part. And what we've done is we've started with a blank canvas here, and we have added this graphic to it. Using the same elements, just rearranged in a different way, we've created, I wouldn't say this is a full wrap, this could be done as a partial wrap. We've got this design here. It's very subtle, it's not competing with anything. We have our illustration a little bit larger than we've done on other things, but I think it works well in this case. There's no phone numbers. There's, for a delivery van, that may be important, but for bigger brands, it's all about brand recognition and getting your name out there. They assume that you're going to contact them through their website or, through the phone book. The important thing for a brand like this is to get the name out there and to show people that they're doing business around town. We do have a little tagline on here, "We deliver and cater." That isn't as large, it's not competing with everything else. It's just a secondary, less important tagline to put on there. And so what I've done to create this is using that same freehand tool that I used to create the logo yesterday. I will go around the shape of this. Now you could use a program like Photoshop or Corel's photo paint to simply get rid of the background here. But the reason I like to do it this way is I am creating a vector shape that I will actually design within, and I will explain that here in a second. So I've created this shape, and it sits right on top of our design. Right now it's straight white. It fits right over top of that. Now, if I were to just create a square, or we can maybe take the elements of the logo here and select the elements that we want to work with, and then we go up to Effects, and then we go to Power Clip, and then we go to Place Inside Container. It's going to give us this arrow here to select any type of shape that we want to power clip this design into. So I'm going to select here. And we're not seeing anything right now, but what we've essentially done is we've moved that design into this shape. I'm going to hit the Control key, and you can actually go within that power clip. Now I got rid of everything else on this stage because right now we are only working within this shape. And to get out of here, we would simply select Finish Editing Object. Now the other way to get inside there would be to right click and go to Edit Contents. And there we go. So now what we can do is create a wedge . We can take some colors from our sketch that we've created, and we can finish editing objects. And as you can see, we've created a wedge similar to what we have going here. It's not quite the same angle, but that's how we did it. At this point, we can also get rid of the fill altogether on this vector shape that we've created and let the white part of the van shine through. Now, as you can see, I still have kind of the lights and the darks of the van displaying over top of that vector shape that I've created, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But before I do that, let me also point out, as you can see, there's not any textures going on in this design. There's no drop shadow effects. There's no gradients. You could still consider it a wrap, but it's not your typical diamond plate. Flames everywhere, wood textures. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's a time and place for that. And in this case, we're trying to create a real simple, clean design. And essentially, what I wanted to show you was it's okay to not use that stuff, and you can still have an effective design without using all that stuff. Some would argue that they are a little bit more effective if you don't. So I'll go back into here. I'm going to adjust this to look a little bit more like the original attempt that I did, but then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the photo that we started off with. We are going to copy it, or Control C. We're going to go back into that power clip by holding down the Control key and clicking on it once. And now I'm going to paste that image in here. So it's now sitting over top of that wedge that I've created. Now I go into Bitmaps. I'm going to go into Image Adjustment Lab. And I am going to bring the brightness all the way down. And I'm going to pull the contrast up pretty high. And I'm going to get rid of my saturation. I just want a black and white image. And I'll hit OK. Now for a black image, you do if you had a black vehicle, you would do the opposite. You would want your highlights to stand out. I actually find doing this technique on darker vehicles a little bit easier. Now by using the transparency tool, we can actually go in here and we want to hit add, because what we're doing is we're taking the light colors from that photo, and we're just adding that. We're not adding the darkness, we're just adding the highlights. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of give us the illusion that, you know, there's a little bit of 3D to this, and it just makes your sketches look a little bit more realistic. And you can adjust your opacity to kind of intensify that. And you could even go in here and make this even darker, probably wouldn't hurt. And now when we go out of there, you can see, you know, it looks a little bit more like it's going within the crevices of the vehicle here. Now, the problem with this is everything that we design, I shouldn't say it's a problem, it's just something you need to know. Everything we design needs to now be behind that. What you could use is the, if you go up into Windows and then Dockers, let's see, where is it? I don't use it all that often. There's an object manager. Yeah, it's already on. Let me see. Windows, Dockers, Object Manager. And essentially what that does is it allows, it's like layers in Adobe products, but we can actually hide things. We can do a lot of different things within here. But what I like to do is simply pull it off to the side, and I'll pull it back on there when I need it later. You know, then we can take our text, now by holding the control key down, I can actually rotate it in increments of 15 degrees, but this wedge that we created isn't an increment of 15 degrees. So what we can do is, when we have our pick tool here, we can kind of get it close to here. What I'm wanting to do is get this point close to that line. Then by selecting it one more time, it then gives me my rotate commands. I can grab the pivot point, move it here, then rotate this until I get it to where it visually looks right. So now we're getting a little bit closer to what we have going on here. As you can see in here, what I've done is I've created a second blue, and I've pulled in some color from the rest of the brand, and we've created a band just for the lettering to go on. Now to do that, I'm just simply make a line over that shape, and then I'm going to duplicate that line again. I'm going to select both of those shapes, I'll combine them, and then I'll use my freehand tool again to finish the shape and close it up. And now I can actually give it color. So let's take the color from his shirt here, or armor I should say. Now that's a little too bright, and our secondary copy won't, oops, accidentally grabbed that there. Our secondary copy won't look good on that. Or I shouldn't say won't look good, it just kind of gets lost. So what we could do is then we could do a number of different things, but what I'm going to do in this case is just use my transparency tool and let some of that blue from behind shine through a little bit more. Now we're getting a lot closer now. That shape I created before, let's go back into our old file. I can now grab that. I'm going to simply copy it, go into my other file, paste it, And let's make it a little bit longer. I'm going to duplicate that. Weld everything together. And just like I did with the Arcadia text, I'll do the same thing here. I click this once, I can grab my pivot point, pull it here. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you just scale that
Yeah.
while it was on an angle?
Yeah, you can scale things while they're on an angle.
And it didn't distort it?
Well, no, because I'm grabbing the if you scale this way, it will distort, and if you scale this way, it will distort. In fact, you wouldn't call it scaling when you do that. You'd be calling it distorting. But this would be scaling when you grab your angle. And one thing I learned is if I want to make this bigger and I try to scale it this way, it's going to want to pull it that way. So that I know that this angle is going this way, if I grab this, I can now keep it on that line that I created. You know, that's just kind of a little easy trick to use. And then lastly, we would add this. I'm going to kind of quickly do this part because I want to show you guys some other cool stuff. Oops. Actually, what we're going to want to do is go to our other design that we created. Let's see. We'll grab him. And all I'm doing to switch between windows is, you know, I've seen people, you know, minimize this and move around that way, but I like to just select window and then quickly get to the window I want. Let's see, we don't need all that. And then the last little part's pretty easy. What I've done is I've created you know, just a shape. When we go in here, it continues out farther this way, you know, off of the screen. And in fact, I definitely recommend when you're doing work, especially if you're doing wraps, to kind of the nice thing about doing this in power clip mode is you can design outside of where the vehicle ends, and then that way when you're ready to print it, you simply send the contents of the power clip to print rather than, you know, the image that you've, you know, shown the customer. So like what I would do here is I'd group all this together, and, you know, depending on the size of your printer, you may end up paneling this a little bit more, but, you know, you could simply just send this to the printer, and you know, you'd have a good start there. But yeah, I simply created that, and like I said, we've got this overlay that we've created earlier, and now we're going to come back up here and lay it over top of our van. And in this case, if I want to make it a little more precise, I'm going to create a square here, copy it, paste it in here, and then use this to kind of make sure it's exactly where it needs to be. And now that's going to lay on top of everything, and it's going to let, you know, the vehicle kind of show through. and we hit finish editing object, and we've got our sketch that we can show our customer how their vehicle is going to look. And like I said, very simple wrap layout. Obviously when you first do it, there's planning involved, and it takes a little bit longer than this, but you know, if you've got a solid idea, it can go as quick as this. And we're not trying to overdo it and just stick with the brand that you created. Everything that you create throughout this brand actually goes pretty quick as time goes on. So that's the vehicle. Any questions on that part? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Quick question, like the great designer you have diagonally there, and this is totally not a loaded question. Did you print that, or did you cut that out of the vinyl? How would you go about putting that gray in?
We print it and then we probably contour cut it.
Print it and put it in separate, so what if the vehicle is underneath it?
Yeah, because we wouldn't. All of this that's white wouldn't be vinyl. There wouldn't be any purpose of doing that. So yeah, once it gets there, you could do, like you're saying, you could do just regular gray vinyl. There's no reason you couldn't do that. But I guess the only reason why we wouldn't maybe do that is because then you've got to register that, and it's a little more effort. Whereas if you print it and then you use your contour cut, it's all together as one graphic. And yeah, so the white part of the vehicle, this would all be cut in here. You know, and then you would probably want to use transfer tape to do some of that. Now, you know, transfer taping and wrapping usually isn't, I mean, this isn't a wrap class, but, you know, that's not always realistic. But, you know, in that case, then you might want to, you know, either print that gray or use gray vinyl, or maybe even silver metallic vinyl if you want to kind of add a little extra to it. Although the way silver works is if the light's hitting it in a certain way, it could be a little bit too dark for this design and maybe compete with the other things that we have going on here. So you know, if it were up to me, I would create a very subtle light gray. Any other questions? That was a good question.
About the template, do you grab them online? Do you have them?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, you don't. He asked about if there was the template here, and yeah, there's a lot of great sources to get templates for vehicles. In this case, I just went to iStock Photo and bought one.
The guy about the library, you know, but they're not digital. When you have digital ones, sometimes they go online and buy them free. You know, you grab them here and there.
Yeah, and I think in this case, you know, you may be safe with using, you know, a free, you know, especially if it's for free and for this purpose. You know, if you've got a blank vehicle, usually they, but yeah, you want to be careful getting images online without permission, obviously. And, you know, if they're giving them away, then yeah, which is what I'm assuming you're saying, they were giving it away for that purpose. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is, you don't always have to use it. You can simply go out into your driveway or your garage or wherever you're working on this and take a photo and do the same exact thing. And to do measurements, I'll show you real quick. Right now, this isn't in scale. So if I create a box here, it says that this van is 11 inches long. So obviously that's not to scale. But the great thing about doing vector is I did a whole wrap here in vector. I can scale this up without losing any quality of my bitmap. So that's kind of a nice thing about doing these types of projects in vector. But to scale that up, what I like to do is I might get a few measurements or maybe even one measurement. Obviously, if you get more than one, you can get a little bit more accurate. But let's say I got a measurement from this point of this molding to this point. What I do then is I create a box. Okay. Now, as you can see, when I first created the box, I didn't make it long enough, and it was at 100%. And then when I pulled it over here, it became 161%. So it's important to reset that. And a quick way to do that is select the box that you created, hit convert to curves, and now it's back to 100%. And you can do that multiple times. So we've created a square, and it says it's 5 inches. Well, obviously that's not right. So we would type in what the correct measurement would be. I don't know, somebody give me a measurement that makes sense for that.
How about a circle with a 10-inch square?
Yeah, you could do the wheel. I like to go a bigger measurement because I feel like the larger measurement you go with, the more accurate it is when because if you start with a smaller measurement and if it's off an eighth of an inch or a half of an inch, that makes a bigger difference when you do the entire image. So if you have the entire length of the vehicle, it's just a little bit more accurate. I found. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but 60. Okay, let's say 60 inches. We'll hit 60, and it's scaled that up to that size. Now, when we did that, it changed the percentage of that shape to 1096.5. So I'm just going to copy that number. I'm going to select my whole vehicle and everything that I just did. I am going to make sure that this is locked here. This will lock the ratio. I'm going to paste that measurement, and it's going to blow everything up to that scale. So now this shape, which is 60 inches, is now this shape, which is 60 inches. And that's how we scale things out at our shop. So we would take a photo of the vehicle, get a measurement somewhere on the vehicle. Like I said, I like to go for some longer body line, and then scale up the entire image. Any more questions on that part? Yeah, go ahead. The only part that's bitmap is the photo of the truck. So obviously, because we would be wrapping this, we wouldn't need the photo of the truck in the wrap print file, but everything else is vector. So there's no loss of quality here. Yeah, go ahead.
How did you get the top layer? Was that part of your iStock vector image with the highlights?
No,
Around the part curve?
I got the top layer from the original image. Basically, you take this image and you go into Bitmap Image Adjustment Lab. We get rid of the saturation. We drop down the brightness. We pull up the contrast. And then we'll just put a solid color back here behind here. I think I went over this before, but it's good to show you this again. Then you select this shape and you go to the transparency tool and you go to uniform, and then you select add. And like I said, this whole thing's being recorded, so if you stop by and you give me your card, I can send you the address of this video, and you can, if I went a little too fast there, I apologize, but you'll actually be able to watch the video and see how that worked out. And so now anything that I put underneath this shape, let me just pull this to the front, is now going to have that. You can put anything back there, doesn't matter. And that's how that works. So we use just one image to create that and to create the background too. Some of the templates that you can get for vehicles have that. Not only do you get the photo of the vehicle, but you also get that overlay already created, and so that might save you some time. But in our case, a lot of times we don't rely on that. We actually wait until the vehicle is in our shop to do, or at least the customers stop by to get measurements and photos of the vehicle. We like to actually work with the real vehicle that we're going to be doing the graphics for, because a lot of times they're not white. A lot of times they've got extra things on them that aren't a part of the template. So in this case I use a template for this design, but that's not always the case. Yeah, go ahead.
At what phase in your contract with your client are you when you're doing this work?
At what phase in the contract?
Like, have they decided? Have they paid you to do the branding? Are you half paid? Because there's a lot of work in presenting all of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it depends on how you approach the project from the beginning, but she asked at what phase of the contract with the customer are we at when we're doing this type of work. A lot of times what we found with our shop is they've come in for a logo or they've come in for a sign, but they might not have come in for both things, or maybe they came in for just vehicle graphics and not the logo. So if they don't have a logo, we try to sell them with the logo first. And if they don't want to purchase a logo, we let them know that the artwork that we're creating is going to be our property until we turn it into a logo for you. And then we go through those necessary steps and we charge them accordingly for that. But in some cases you might have a company that wants all this stuff done, and then you would come up with some sort of contract for them. You would then quote out what it would be to do that job. It really depends on how your business is set up, whether you're doing things hourly. That kind of goes beyond the scope of this seminar, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I guess today I'm just mainly focusing on how to actually do it. So, but that's a good question. I can talk to you a little bit more about that after the seminar and how we do it, if that would be helpful. So, yeah, one more question.
When you take this image from Corel and say send it to your RIP software, okay?
Yeah.
You're not including the transparency when it goes down to the RIP.
No, yeah, like this blue here, this stripe that I made as a transparency. Yeah, what I would probably do then.
You're gonna pick a spot color.
Yeah, I'm gonna use my my color eyedropper tool. Now there's a couple different. You can either do the attributes or you can do the color, and you want to do color in this case. You want to select this color that we've created. Oops, in this case it's not working.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe a little off topic here, but when you've taken stuff from Corel that has transparency in it,
Yeah,
and you send it to a JPEG, like for show card, for example.
yeah.
Or you send it to the RIP.
Hmm.
Does transparency do strange things?
It can if you're.
Or you can send it out as a JPEG and flatten it?
That's a very good question. When we send things to RIP, a lot of times we flatten it in Corel first and then send it to RIP, except for the cut contour, which we would obviously keep vector, and that would be we use a Roland, so Roland's got a cut contour profile that's built into Corel.
But if you specifically with Roland, if you have an image with a transparency in it, and you need to keep it vector so you can maintain the cut contour, I can manage that.
Well, what we would do is we'd select everything but the contour. We'd flatten it into a bitmap, and then we would keep the cut contour with it, select the bitmap and the cut contour, and export it in EPS. Now, if you have a slower computer, if your computer has some memory issues, I'm sure you might have run into issues where that doesn't quite work and the file becomes corrupt. What we've learned at our shop, it actually works really well, is we send the bitmap separately to the cut or to the printer. Then what we do is we create a border around the cut contour that is the exact same dimensions as the print that we've created. So in this case, if our print is going to be this square and our cut contour is going to be inside of here, we would then create another square. We would select that square and the cut contour and send those as a separate EPS. Then when you're doing your print process, you print the print part, and then when it asks you to cut, instead of using the print file, you use the vector file instead. And that's a good way to split up that artwork into two smaller size files. And when we've recently upgraded our computers, but in the past that's something that we've had to do for really large, very detailed graphics. But yeah, that's a good question. And
crop marks do it with the second file?
yeah, as long as the shape of the print, the actual bitmap part of it is the exact same dimensions as that square that you created, then yeah, those will. It's basically like creating a registration mark. But no, you brought up a good point about transparencies. A lot of times Corel does not export transparencies well for other programs, and because it handles it in a different way than, like, let's say Adobe Illustrator or even the RIP software. So you may want to flatten your vector into a bitmap when you're ready to print as a high resolution, or whatever your standard is at your shop. We do ours at 200 or 300 DPIs or DPI. But in this case, you could actually do this in vector by simply getting rid of any transparencies that you use. Avoid things like drop shadows and complex gradients and things like that. And if you keep it simple, you could just send this all over as an EPS to your printer instead. But I'll answer more questions about the actual print process. Right now I want to kind of stick with the design part of this, but I'm going to move on now to, let's see, what do we got time-wise? So we better hurry. Let me open another file here. I'm going to show you the website part, but I'm going to briefly go over this because unless you actually have the ability to do websites, you can design websites and work with somebody who can build them, but it's not often that sign shops are doing websites too. But I just want to show you real quick that we can use these same elements in a website. So what we've done here is all we've really done is design the header and the top part of the website. Now, normally there would be content below here. It just depends on how the site's laid out. But we've used this panel logo that we've created, and we've decided to use this for the header part of the logo, or of the website. And we've created a navigation here. Now with websites, you can start adding textures and drop shadows, because we're dealing with bitmaps for websites. Unless you're using Flash, which there's we won't get into that too much, but unless you're using Flash, there's really no reason to be doing any type of vector work on a website. So what you're wanting to do is create you can design this all in vector, but the output will end up being a bitmap, just like it might be with a flattened image for a wrap. But here again, we use that kind of Mediterranean Greek design element, and we've created a subtle texture here. But other than this photo here, this is all vector. We've got, this is an outline where you can actually go in here and change how that outline looks. And we've essentially just kind of designed the header part of the website. Now when we do websites, when we send it to actually build the website, what we would then do is duplicate this. We would get rid of the things that we'd actually build within the website, the coding part of it, and we would get rid of that. Then we would select all this, and we would go to File, Export. We would want to export it as either a JPEG or a PNG. Is anybody familiar with the difference between, or is there anyone not familiar with the difference between JPEGs and PNGs? Okay. Well, the PNG has transparent properties to it. Now, when it comes to web development, and this may be a little advanced for this class, but when it comes to website development, the problem with using PNGs, and it's a very minor problem, is very old browsers don't support them. And some of them will load PNGs, but they won't load the transparent effect. So if you had a logo and you wanted, instead of the white square around the logo, you wanted to sit the logo on top of, let's say, a picture of some clouds, you would use a PNG because it would allow the clouds to show through the contour part of the logo. So that is when you would use a PNG over a JPEG. But for the most part, you want to stick with JPEGs. You could use GIFs, but they're lower quality. We just kind of avoid using them unless we don't need the quality that a JPEG or a PNG could offer you. So then we would go to export. Now when you're doing websites, you want to do the 24-bit RGB because we're dealing with monitor colors, not print colors. So we're dealing with red, green, and blue. Also, the file size is a little bit smaller that way. Now, I don't know if any of you have really played too much with the export features of Corel, but we would like to make sure that our quality is at 100%. And then this is a real nice feature that's optional. I think Corel has it set to standard by default, but that's the first thing we change at our shop is optional, and now that's our default. And what you'll notice is especially with reds look, when you export reds in CorelDRAW and it's set to standard, there's some kind of weird texturing that happens. So we like to make sure that it's set all the way up, and we make sure that our blur is all the way down. Then we make sure that the anti-aliasing is on, and essentially what that's doing is it's smoothing out the image a little bit better, so it doesn't look it looks a little bit more jagged when that's not on there. And I could go into that a little bit further, but for the most part, we like to make sure that's turned on. Then what we want to do is we want to make sure it's 72 dpi, and then we want to make sure that it's the measurement that we've designed it for. And then I would hit OK, and then from there we would take it into another software, maybe break that image up into smaller images, and then that's how we create a website. But I just kind of wanted to show you the design part of it, what we do in the CorelDRAW platform. So any questions on the website stuff? Yeah, go ahead.
If you were exporting it, let's say for a really large banner, but you wanted good resolution,
Yeah.
and you're in the JPEG export filter because you've got transparencies and other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you want flat.
Yeah.
It seems that Corel has a limit right around 1 gigabyte, and the JPEG, when you take a 1 gig JPEG and hit the preview,
Mm-hmm.
it presses it down to maybe 10, 12 megs.
Yeah.
Any way to bump that 1 gigabyte limit up? If you've got like a 64-bit, 16 gig of RAM machine?
You can try doing a TIFF. I've been able to get larger resolution images to work a little bit better when I export as a TIFF.
When you have the res too high and it's too large an area, it starts scaling down the percentage.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And the best way I've gotten around that is a TIFF. Or I've paneled the design, and then when I send it over to the print software, I assemble the panels there. That's another way of doing it. It seems like in CorelDRAW X3, that stuff was done a little bit better. They tried to do things with the preview that I think kind of slowed down the exporting process in CorelDRAW. So, I hope they go back to, some of the basics that they had in X3. Okay, I'm going to move on real quick to the next part here. I want to kind of show you some of the print material that you can create using the same brand. Oops, missing a font. Hopefully that wasn't an important one. Now, a lot of times when you're creating a logo package for your client, you may want to do things like assemble Pantone colors for them to use throughout their brand. Another thing you might want to do is set them up with the secondary copy, a font that they can use too. In which case, they would need to purchase the font. They could purchase it through you, but you would also need to purchase it for them. So, in this case, this is a letterhead font. Letterhead's got some fantastic fonts for sale on their website. But the thing I like about this one is it's very clean, it's easy to read, and it works well for secondary copy. But it's got a little bit of a personality to it too. But to do business cards, pretty simple process. Here we use this texture again. We use the logo. The only really thing that we've added here is we've created rounded corners here, and I'll show you how to do that right now. I showed some of you this yesterday, but I want to show it again because it's a great tool. Whenever you create a shape, like a square, you can actually grab the shape tool, and right off the bat you can round those corners, or you can maybe select just one of them, or by holding your shift key down, select two of them. But that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is, let's say it's been converted to curves and that option is no longer available, or if it's an abstract shape, you can go up to Windows and you can go into Dockers, and we want to grab this tool here. Oops, I accidentally turned that off. Hold on, let me go back. Dockers. And then we can apply, or we can select all these nodes. And as you can see, while I'm changing the measurement, it's kind of showing me a preview beforehand, but that's another way of doing that same effect. Then what you can do is you can create an internal contour. I showed you before how to do an external contour for the sign at the very beginning of the seminar, but you can do the exact same thing. We'll use this shape even though it's not a business card shape. Use your contour tool, and instead of doing outside contour, you do inside contour. And so we would go like that, get it to about where we need it. And when we're done, we will break that apart. We will select this one that we created, and here we can give it the dashed line that we want. Oops. Now depending on the width of the outline, it kind of gives it different effects, but there's kind of what we're looking to get. And so that's how we created that. Now over here, we did the same power clip that we did on the vehicle, we added here. Now, we don't print business cards in-house. In this case, what I'm trying to show the client is these. If you've been to a place like Dave & Buster's, they give you these cards and you can add credits to them, and then you swipe them at the the video game stations, and you can play games. So this would actually be like a credit card like that, and in that case it would probably be done by a company that's providing those services. But for same thing with the gift cards, it'd be done in a similar way. But that would be something that you could still design even though you're not producing it. The same way with business cards. We actually don't print business cards in-house. We're not set up to do that, but we will design business cards. Now when you're designing business cards, they tend to like it when you design things in CMYK, and when you export things in CMYK, and when they get files that are in CMYK. Sometimes you can work out a way, if you're an RGB fan like myself, because I like the real bright blues and the real bright greens that you can get. Even though you can't quite predict how RGB files are always going to look, and if you do RGB, you kind of lose the Pantone colors that you've done with your client. I'm still able to get some real bright colors. So for some projects, I like to do that in RGB. But just like I was showing you with the website, you would export an image, but instead of where it said RGB 24-bit, you would want to, and I'll show you right now actually. You would go to File, Export, name it what you want. Now you want to make sure Selected Only is on too, and for whatever reason, whenever we get Corel installed for the first time, that is not selected, and it wants to export everything on your. And if you're like me, I like to have multiple things in one document, and so that can kind of become an issue. So you want to make sure that's selected. And here's where I was talking about going from RGB to CMYK. And we could get into color profiling, but like I said in an earlier seminar, that would be a class in itself. You want to make sure that you have your correct color profile selected if you're doing things like Pantone colors. And then, we like to print at 300 dpi. Now, if you do TIFFs, you can actually do higher resolution images. but JPEGs and Corel, they're limited to 300 dpi. A way around that would be to design it at twice the scale at 300 dpi, and then scale it down, or send it to the printer and tell them to scale it down halfway, and then you've got a 600 dpi image essentially. And then you would hit OK. And so that is pretty much how we handle business cards and print material. The only thing I want to show you with this is we also created a menu. It's the same concept as designing a print, except for in this case we used a nice photo. Now this is the first time we're actually using photos with our brand, but I wanted to show you this as an example of, you know, if you keep your brand real simple and clean, it works really well with photos too. And so we got a stock photo here. Now the problem with this stock photo is these glasses didn't say Arcadia on them. And so what I did there, let me pull up our, actually I'll just do it with this one because we can do it with color too. What you can actually do is we'll group this. Now, before I was telling you about the distort tool, now I'm actually going to show you how that works. It's actually called, I'm sorry, the envelope tool. Now the envelope tool, what we can do is we can actually distort the image like this. And so you would just kind of fine tune this and get this just the way you want it. Oops. And then when it's all said and done, I know that's not perfect, but just to kind of show you, when it's all said and done, we then convert it to a bitmap. And then, I lost some of my colors there. Well, anyway, convert that to a bitmap. Then what I like to do is, because this is in the background and it's kind of blurred out, that looks like it's kind of popping out and it's drawing attention to itself. It would normally be blurred like the image. So a really cool feature, you don't have to go into Photo Paint or Photoshop or anything. It's actually built directly into CorelDRAW. You've got all these great powerful bitmap tools right here, and one of them is blur, and we use this Gaussian blur tool. And you can kind of preview it and adjust it accordingly. And you hit OK. And that's how I did this right here. Here again, I use PowerClip a lot to do this. You know, I've got the photo here. I've got this part going out like this. I've got my texture going beyond the actual graphic itself. But that's how I created that menu. Any questions about that or the printing material? No? Okay. Any questions in general about CorelDRAW and what we've done here today? Cool. Be sure to stop by, and if you got a business card or if you got your contact information, I can send you an email when it's all ready to go. Otherwise, you can go to our website. It's diazmedia.com. I'm going to put these videos on our blog section of the website. However, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to password protect that, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't want people that didn't spend money to come to these seminars to be able to see the same thing that you guys did. So I think that's fair for you guys to do it that way. But so when I contact you guys with the by email, I'm going to send you that password too, and you'll simply type that in, and then you'll have access to this stuff. So thank you very much.